Hello. In this week's Torah portion, Metzora, we read about the rituals for cleansing people who are afflicted with a skin disease, or tzaraat, sometimes identified with leprosy. In the Torah, Miriam was punished with tzaraat for badmouthing her brother Moses. Because of this, the sages understood the disease to be caused by lashon hara, the evil tongue, or malicious speech. The Talmud says, quote, Rabbi Yosef ben Zimra says, anyone who engages in malicious speech will be afflicted by leprous marks coming upon him. As it is stated in Psalms, I will destroy he who slanders his friend in secret. Unquote. The sages were always very emphatic in telling us to avoid speaking ill of others. The Talmud warns us, quote, there are 4 things for which punishment is exacted from a person in this world, while the principal punishment remains intact for him in the world to come: idolatry, sexual immorality, and murder, the 3 cardinal sins of Judaism. And lashon hara, the evil tongue, is equal to them all. Slanders destroys 3 persons: he who speaks evil, he who listens to it, and he who is spoken about. Unquote. When God charged Moses with leading the Exodus, Moses said of the Israelites, they will not believe me. The Torah then says, quote, the Lord said to him further, put your hand in your bosom. He put his hand into his bosom, and when he took it out, his hand was encrusted with snowy scales. And God said, put your hand back in your bosom. He put his hand back into his bosom, and when he took it out of his bosom, there it was again like the rest of his body. Rashi understands this passage to mean that Moses was punished for speaking ill of the Israelites. One might think that one way to avoid lashon hara is not to say anything. Indeed, the sages praised silence. The Mishnah tells us that Rabban Gamliel's son Shimon used to say, quote, all my days I grew up among the sages, and I had found nothing better for a person than silence. Whoever indulges in too many words brings about sin. It adds that Rabbi Akiva said, a fence to wisdom is silence. Bartenura from 15th century Italy clarifies that this advice does not refer to words of Torah, which we are supposed to actively engage in, or about malicious speech, which the Torah has already forbidden, but only to optional speech, which he says must be minimized. Along these lines, Rabbi Abraham ben Shmuel ibn Hasdai Halevi from 13th century Catalonia wrote, man was given 2 ears and 1 tongue so that he may listen more than speak. On a more down-to-earth level, Mark Twain says, it's better to keep your mouth shut and be thought a fool than to open your mouth and remove all doubts. However, the problem with silence is that while it prevents us from sinning, it generally does not accomplish any good. This raises the question, should you go out of your way to praise others? The sages laid down a principle. A negative commandment implies a positive commandment and vice versa. Quote, the Torah says, honor your father and your mother so that your days may be prolonged. This means that if you honor them, your days will be prolonged. And if not, they will be shortened, because the words of Torah are terse. The positive implies the negative, and the negative implies the positive. The Torah says, and you shall teach these words to your children so that your days and the days of your children may increase. This implies, if not, your days will be shortened, because the words of Torah are expounded as follows. From the negative, you infer the positive, and from the positive, you infer the negative. In other words, if you don't honor your parents or instruct your children, your life won't just not be extended, but it will actually be shortened. Rabbi Meir disagreed, but he was in the minority. This principle implies that if speaking ill of others is forbidden, then speaking well of them should be required. The opposite of lashon hara should be lashon hatov, the good tongue. Yet that expression is not found in our sources. Maimonides endorsed it heartily, quote, one is obliged to speak in praise of his neighbor. Rabbi Joseph Telushkin, in his 2009 book, A Code of Jewish Ethics, Volume 2, Love Your Neighbor as Yourself, has a whole section on lashon hatov, arguing that it follows directly from love your neighbor as yourself. What is the best way to praise people? 3 general guidelines can be found. First, focus your praise. The Mishnah mentioned that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai used to praise his students as follows. Rabbi Eliezer ben Hyrcanus had an excellent memory. This was when the oral law was still oral and books were rare and expensive. Shimon ben Netanel is pious and reverential. Elazar ben Arach is creative in his interpretations of Torah, unquote. The lesson is, don't be too effusive and concentrate specifically on what is salient. For example, he is always scrupulously honest. He is always scrupulously honest is better than he's a great guy. Rabbi Jonathan Sachs calls it focused praise and strongly endorses it. Second, lie to make people feel good, if necessary. The Talmud says you must tell the bride she is beautiful on her wedding day, even if you think she's ugly as sin. Lying is also permitted to keep the peace. This is called shalom bayit. So, no matter what you really think, tell the bride she's beautiful, praise other people's purchases, tell them you miss them, tell them they haven't aged, tell them you like their gifts, tell them some people you both know have good feelings towards them, even if it stretches the truth a bit, as Aaron did, etc. Third, praise efforts more than absolute attributes. Rabbi Jonathan Sachs argues that it's better to praise efforts than praise fixed characteristics to encourage growth. He notes that Rabbi Ben Zakkai praised Rabbi Eliezer for his memory, but later Rabbi Eliezer was placed on the harem for refusing to accept the majority view. Rabbi Ben Zakkai praised Rabbi Elazar for his originality, but later Rabbi Elazar decided to live far from the center of scholarship and forgot his knowledge, to the point that he could not read correctly a Torah scroll. The second brings to mind what Hillel said, quote, he who does not increase his knowledge loses it. Rabbi Sachs concludes that absolute praise creates a mindset that avoids risk for fear of not living up to the description, while praising efforts encourages risk as the price for growth. Quote, it may be that praising his students for their innate abilities rather than their efforts, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai inadvertently encouraged the 2 most talented of them to develop a fixed mindset rather than engage with colleagues and stay open to intellectual growth. Rabbi Ben Zakkai might have told Rabbi Eliezer, I wish somebody could remember what's in these particular hard-to-find books. Or told Rabbi Elazar, these particularly hard-to-interpret passages need some fresh thinking applied to them. Some argue that praising people's qualities, even if they're not salient, may reinforce them, bring them to the fore, and cause people to work on improving them. Positive speech leads to positive actions. However, there is pushback. Not all sages agree others should be praised. The Talmud warns, quote, Rav Dimi, brother of Rav Safra, said, a person should never speak about the goodness of another, because speaking about his goodness will lead to disparaging him, unquote. Why? The fear is that he or his listeners may then try to temper the praise with criticism. Maimonides applies this, but only to one's enemies. Quote, one who tells of the good qualities of his fellow in the presence of his fellow's enemies is guilty of a form of evil speech, because he provokes them to disparage him. This raises the question, how far should one go in seeking the good in evil people and advertising it? Should we even say that Hitler was very affectionate with his dogs? He was. Also, telling someone you expect miracles from him on a specific task, especially in front of others, puts tremendous pressure on him to deliver, knowing that if he doesn't, people will think less of him. Finally, Praising everybody lavishly may lead to nobody believing you. Professors who write glowing letters of recommendation for all their students without any balance are usually roundly ignored, even if they're famous. Conclusion: praising others is praiseworthy, but only up to a point. Shabbat shalom.